I got a job. I got a life. I got a kid on the way.
What's up, youngsters? You been good to my cousin Ruthie?
How does someone go from running the streets of East LA, deep in the gang life, even staring down a life sentence, to becoming a Hollywood star? Sounds like something straight out of a movie, but it's the real-life story of Richard Cabral.
In this society, you have to belong to something. All we have in the neighborhood is a gang.
Richard Cabral is a Mexican-American actor, producer, and writer, best known for his unforgettable roles in the Golden Globe-nominated crime drama American Crime. His raw, powerful performances have earned him rave reviews, leading to roles in Fox's Lethal Weapon and the hit Sons of Anarchy spin-off Mayans MC, its show already being called a TV classic in the making. But before the bright lights and red carpets, Richard lived the harsh reality of gang life in East LA, a world built on survival, struggle, and an unshakable culture. He was a documented member of Barrio 213 in Montebello, California. It was home. His uncles, kind of like quiet guides, had been through it all. They'd lived that life, and whether he knew it or not, they had a big impact on how he saw things. He wasn't just involved, he was all the way in, with a long track record of trouble with the law, one close call almost landing him 35 years to life.
We were just looking at each other, and he says 35, and I couldn't even cry. My eyes got watery.
But just when it seemed like his life was about crashing, something or someone came along and turned it around for good. So how did it all kick off? Let's dive in and find out. Richard Cabral was born on August 28, 1984, in East Los Angeles. His dad left when he was just 2, so his mom, Lourdes Valtierra, raised him alone. Growing up in East LA in the 80s meant being surrounded by gangs, drugs, and violence. Richard didn't have to go looking for trouble. It was just part of everyday life. His mother had her own struggles. Kicked out of her home at 17, her life changed completely when she had Richard at 21. She still remembered that moment vividly. The tiny head, slightly coned from birth, and the way he turned to reveal the deepest dimple she had ever seen.
I was kicked out at the age of 17 at my house, and that messed me up. That messed me up.
From that second forward, she knew her life had a new purpose. Their bond was unshakable. She protected him fiercely. No man in her life was ever allowed to lay a hand on him. Richard saw different men come and go, but none of them were his father. Still, she never kept Richard away from his dad. She made sure he visited him in Texas when he was around 7 or 8.
I love that boy to death. I mean, no one, even though he didn't have his father around, he still had a contact with his father. I never one time stopped Richard from seeing his father.
It wasn't easy for her, but she put Richard's needs first. Even then, Richard felt something heavy inside him, a resentment he couldn't explain.
Mom didn't really she respected. I mean, Mom had my back, she never really cut me loose, but I know.
He didn't understand why his father had moved on and started a new family while he was left behind. That kind of pain doesn't come out in quiet words. It comes out in throwing rocks at your dad, in shouting things you don't fully understand, in trying to make sense of feelings too big to carry. His father was a hardworking Mexican man, never involved in gangs or crime. But Richard's world was different. He didn't choose the streets. They were just there. The gangster life wasn't about rebellion. It was just life. His uncles, the men his mother had been with, the neighborhood itself. It all shaped him.
Me growing up, I hit the gangster stuff. I became what I became because it was around me. That gangster style, that gangster stilo, it was real common, everywhere I turned to, whether it was my mom's old man, whether it was my uncle, it was all around me.
He was smart, no doubt. He went to Catholic school, did well in class, and his mother always pushed him toward education. But by 12, the pull of the streets had already started. By 14, he was in deep. He experimented with drugs, ran with the wrong crowd, looking for something: respect, status, belonging. His first real run-in with the system came over something small, stealing a bike, but the law didn't see it as small. That was robbery.
He asked the kid to give him his bike, and the fact that he said no and he pushed him, took the bike, what is that, robbery?
When his grandfather called his mom to tell her, it was a wake-up call. When she visited him, she could see the fear in his eyes, though he tried to act tough. "Mom, please don't cry," he told her. "If you cry, I'm gonna cry, and I can't cry in here."
He wanted a bike. He asked the kid to give him his bike, and
That moment stuck with her. It was the first time she saw her son truly face the weight of his choices. But it wouldn't be the last. One petty theft turned into bigger crimes. By 17, he had his first strike, a beer run gone wrong. What should have been nothing turned into strong-arm robbery when he fought back against security. One bad decision, and now he had a record.
I was at 17. Yeah, because now they don't play that. Whoever's watching this, whoever does watch this, it was a beer run gone wrong. That's what it was. It was a beer run gone wrong. I was in Hacienda Heights, and I put a tequila bottle in my pants, and I walked out. But I used to do this all the time, but I mean, I was drunk this time. The cops came, so I found out that once you use force on any type of petty theft, it's considered a robbery.
East LA was its own world, full of culture, struggle, survival. It was home. His uncles had served as father figures, not through words, but through presence. They had been through the system. They had lived that life. And whether he liked it or not, they shaped the way he saw the world. By the early 2000s, the drug game had changed. Crack had faded, and meth had taken its place, tearing through the streets like a storm. The streets still had their grip on him. He had done time, but he knew who he was. Unlike some who got out and never looked back, Richard had made a promise. He wasn't going to forget the ones still locked up, the ones with no one left to send letters, no one checking for them. He wanted to do right by them one day, send them a package, a TV, something to make life a little easier in a place where nothing was easy. He had seen it all. He remembered that night at Wayside, the setup, the weed, the weapons. When one of the inmates cracked under pressure and ran to the gate begging to be let out, Richard knew it was about to go down, a snitch in the making, and they had too much contraband for it to end any other way.
I'm good. Yeah. Okay, so, all right, I'm up in Wayside. It's rocking and rolling. We strapped, man. We were full blown, man. We got meth. We got weed. We got a lot of in there, right? And they come in. Some fool had I guess he was tweaking, and this freaking he fucking runs in the middle of the night and goes to the front of the gate like, let me out. This fool's tripping. Let me out that fool. But we already know that he's gonna snitch on us. You know, there's a lot of else in the dorm.
So he got ready. When the riot squad stormed in, masks on, rubber bullet guns at the ready, Richard moved fast. He knew the drill. If they caught him with a weapon, it was over. The lighter, the weed, that was one thing. But the knife? That could bury him. So he hid it the way every inmate learns to survive.
I got the I got a lighter, and I got a bang. The gooners come in, bam. Ninja Turtle suits, get down, everybody get down. Bam, they're hitting the house, right? Now, you do not know what hoopy means. It means, you know what I'm saying, to put in your rectum, whatever you want to call it.
The raid was brutal. Rubber bullets flying, guards screaming for everyone to get down. One of them locked eyes on Richard, yanked him up, cuffed him. He thought he had seen something, but it was too late. The knife was already gone. But they found something else, a small bag of weed. That was enough, straight to the hole. That little mistake cost him an extra year, a hard lesson. Richard had been deep in the life, making choices that led him straight to where he was. That one night, the one that changed everything, started like any other, out with the homies, drinking, driving around. Someone handed him a gun just in case. He didn't plan to use it, but then he saw a stranger in his neighborhood. The guy said he didn't bang, but Richard wasn't hearing it. Adrenaline was pumping. Enemies were on his mind. He swung first, but the guy was bigger. His homie jumped in and Richard reached for the gun. One shot, stomach. The guy staggered, made it to a door. Another shot, then they were gone.
You don't give a bam, I just took off on him. Boom, I socked him in his mouth. And homeboy helps me out, because that fool's bigger than me and he's like kind of on me, so bam, my homeboy pushes him off me. And like I get him off me, and then I remember the gun in my back pocket and I just pull it out like.
The streets talk. Someone pointed him out in a lineup, and just like that, the cops were knocking. He was on the run for months, always looking over his shoulder.
No, sure enough, bam, man, they started hitting pads looking for me. They were hitting pads looking for me. Went on the run. I was on the run for like 4 or 5 months.
But running wasn't freedom. It was just delaying the inevitable. A week before his 21st birthday, he walked into the station and turned himself in. He could have kept running, stretched it out a little longer. But what was the point? He was tired, done. When he walked in, he caught eyes with his mom. Richard just said one word, 35. That was the number, 35 years to life. She couldn't even cry. She just stood there feeling the weight of it settle in.
We're just looking at each other, and he says 35, and I couldn't even cry. My eyes got watery.
He had money, enough to get by, but it wouldn't change the outcome. He started fighting his case from day one. The attempted murder charge carried 25 years, plus 10 more for the gang affiliation, but they didn't have solid evidence. He knew he could beat the big charge. The real danger was the gang enhancement. They had pictures of him throwing up signs, and sometimes that was all it took to seal your fate. The day before trial, they threw out an offer, 6 years. He just laughed. "Man, I ain't doing 6. I didn't even shoot that fool," he told his lawyer to push for 3. The lawyer came back with 4. By then, Richard had already been locked up for almost 2 years. He knew how this worked. 4 was better than 35. He took the deal.
We was like, man, they offered you 4. They offered you 4. He was like, man, you already got like almost 2 years credit. And I was like, yeah, you're right.
While he was inside, they caught him with a little weed. That added another year. By then, Richard was in. His lawyer had warned him, told him not to take deals. But Richard was just a kid, going up against the system alone. They gave him 4 years, but he had already been fighting his case for 1. In the end, he only did a year at Ironwood State Prison. 2 months after getting out, he was right back in. That was the cycle. That was the life. When Richard went back, his mom fought for him. She showed them proof. He was in college, trying to turn things around. Parole didn't care. He did 9 months, got into a fight inside, and ended up serving a year and a half before he finally got out for good.
Showed proof of all that. He was working, everything. He'll serve 9 months. Se enoja inside there, he gets pissed off, does his own thing, and I don't blame him. Gets in a fight, comes out a year and a half later.
Years later, they were still dealing with the past, but Richard had moved forward. He had grown, seen both sides of life, what it meant to be free and what it meant to be stuck. His path led him somewhere unexpected, a men's home, a food ministry. It was the first time he saw people actually helping each other with no strings attached. No street politics, no hidden agendas, just people trying to do good. It changed something in him, didn't erase the past, didn't fix everything overnight, but it gave him a new way to see the world, a new reason to keep pushing. And then there was music. It started back in camp, writing poems for his first baby's mom. Those poems turned into lyrics. Lyrics turned into verses. And before he knew it, music became his way of telling his story. By the time he hit county jail, he wasn't writing about love anymore. He was writing about life, about everything he'd been through. Rap was just poetry with a beat, and he had a lot to say.
Well, I was in camp. I was just really doing time for my first time for possession of meth and poems at 15 to my first baby's mom. I was writing her poems. So like from 15 to 19, from 15 to 18.
Now, standing on the other side of it all, he still carried the scars. He still remembered walking into that police station, hearing that number, 35, ringing in his ears. But he was here. He was alive. And he wasn't done fighting for something better. Richard kept grinding, chasing opportunities in the entertainment world, refusing to let his past define him. He landed roles just by showing up, putting in the work, proving himself. He had already been in Rampart with Oren Moverman, and now he was gearing up for a better life with Chris Weitz.
On the motion picture Rampart, director Oren Moverman, and this movie that I'm coming out is...
Acting wasn't just a dream anymore, it was happening, and he wasn't taking it lightly. He trained for months at the Aaron Spicer Acting Studio, and before that, spent a year and a half at the Hollywood Film Acting Academy.
Last year and a half, I was training at the Hollywood Film Acting Academy.
But getting out of prison didn't mean life got easy. Stability was hard to find. He took whatever jobs he could, hard labor, anything to keep the bills paid. But after a while, it wore him down. One night, while pumping gas, he finally admitted to his mom. He was exhausted, didn't know how much longer he could keep this up.
And he's looking at me, and he's standing there, and he's like, "Mom," and I'm like, "What's wrong, Ricardo?" I knew there was something's up with Richard, and he's just like standing there and do this anymore. It was the first time, Louis, that I could actually say that I didn't even know what to say, because Richard has never...
She didn't hesitate. "Call your dad, Richard."
Help me say something, anything, Lord. I was just doing that in my mind, and I'm looking, I said, "Mijo," and then all that came out, and obviously it was God. I said, "Call your dad, Richard."
That call changed everything. His father told him to focus on getting steady work first. get his footing before worrying about anything else. So Richard listened. He applied to Homeboy Industries, a place known for giving former inmates a real shot at rebuilding their lives. It wasn't easy. Interviews, drug tests, pre-orientation, they wanted to know what he saw for his future.
School's always gonna be there, that I just gotta get a job, and you know what, I'm gonna go to Homeboys. Interesting about Homeboys, because he had gotten a call, he went down there, but they said to come back. Right, me also, you feel better? He goes, yeah, I feel better, Mama.
But Richard was ready. He got in, and for the first time in a long time, he had some stability. Through Homeboy, Richard stumbled into something he never expected: acting. Hollywood was always on the lookout for realness in gang-related roles, and Homeboy had a connection with Central Casting. One day, he and a few others got the invite to sign up as extras. First day at Central Casting, he got booked. Puerto Rican thug on CSI Miami. That one gig led to more. NCIS, Cold Case, CSI, New York. Turns out he had something casting directors were looking for, but he knew looks and raw talent would only get him so far. If he wanted to turn this into something real, he had to train. His mom and a few people in the industry helped him find the right acting schools. The first few times on set, nerve-wracking, but he got better. By the time he landed a role on Southland, directors started seeing more than just the look. They saw the potential. That's when it hit him. If he wanted to go further, he had to put in the work. His path to the New York Film Academy started with a random conversation. A guy named Manny, someone he barely knew, agreed to meet up after some back and forth. They linked up at a Denny's near the old Twin Towers jail, both excited about what could come from it. Manny wasn't looking for anything in return. He just wanted to help. Said it reminded him of his late mother and all the things she did for him. That meeting set everything in motion. At first, Manny had a different opportunity in mind for Richard, but by the end of the conversation, he brought up No IFA instead, a 6-week course, $600, a lot of money at the time. But they decided it was worth it. That choice opened doors, scene study, new connections, and eventually a better life. For his mom, seeing him on screen was everything. She had always loved movies, so watching her son break into the industry was like a dream come true. She knew the sacrifices, the long days, the struggles, the setbacks, but none of it mattered as long as Richard was happy. And beyond acting, fatherhood changed him. The birth of his daughter was a moment that stayed with him. He had a son too, but life had made things complicated. Still, having his daughter in his life was different. He was there, witnessing every little moment, learning how to be the kind of father he wished he'd had growing up. Life wasn't perfect, but he was determined to do right by her. Richard always believed in pushing forward, no matter what the past looked like. Mistakes, they happened. What mattered was what you did next. He always told people, find what you're good at and go all in, because time won't wait for you. If you had a dream, you had to chase it now. His tattoos told his story too. His mom had mixed feelings about some of them, but she understood. They were part of him. The one that meant the most, her name, right over his heart. People judged him for his ink sometimes, but he didn't care. He had a way of flipping the script, making them see past the surface. His words, his energy, his drive. That's what really spoke for him. Through all the highs and lows, Richard and his mom kept moving forward. She never saw him as a mama's boy. She saw him as a man chasing something bigger, someone who refused to quit. He trained harder than ever, took classes late into the night, always looking for ways to get better. He knew this wasn't just about talent. It was about resilience, about proving that no matter where you start, you can always rewrite your story. His journey wasn't just about making it. It was about breaking cycles, proving that no matter how hard you fall, there's always a way back. And the next chapter, still unfolding. Richard never tried to stand out. He just did. Confident but humble. His past fueled him. He wasn't waiting for a break. He was building his future, step by step. Hollywood kept trying to box him in, but he refused. He trained, he showed up, and slowly the industry took notice. He wasn't just another actor. He was the real deal. His mom saw it, his son saw it, and soon, so did everyone else. Southland, A Better Life, Sons of Anarchy. He wasn't just getting roles, he was changing the game. No more stereotypes, no limits, just skill, depth, and the hunger to keep growing. But this was bigger than acting. Life was expanding. Fashion, business, travel. Doors were opening, and at the center of it all, his kids. He wanted them to have choices, not just struggles. Through it all, his mom was there. The highs, the lows, the unspoken moments, the bond never wavered. Now, with his career, his family, his future all coming together, one thing was clear: the grind wasn't over. But for the first time, he wasn't just surviving, he was winning.